The next type of proof we're going to look at is a flow proof. A flow proof comes from flow chart. We're going to use boxes and arrows, and we're going to show our thinking. You can show your thinking easier in a flow proof than you can in a two-column proof. Some people like to do flow proofs all the time. I'll give you a choice on your test what kind of proof you want to do, but I also will ask you once in a while, and I'll tell you what kind of proof to do to make sure you can do all three. So what happens when you're doing a flow proof, we put our statements, what we know is true, we're going to put those in boxes. And what we're going to do is below that, we're going to write down our reasoning. Now, I stole this from your assignment, so it's kind of confusing here. You're going, what the heck? Those things in the dash lines on your assignment, I asked you to pull them up in here. So, but I put the answers in here for you. So I know because we're given it's a midpoint, I know from that JP is congruent to PK. That's where I draw my arrow. And then from that, I know JP equals PK because I can always change the congruent sign to an equal sign. And then it's not really given to me, but it is kind of given to me. In my picture, notice JP is X and PK is 5X minus 8. This proof, everything follows from each other. They kind of rent out a room here until we get to the end. So but sometimes you might have to start over because you run out of what to say. And then what we do is I would have just pulled this in here, like this should go into that box, and then this should go into that box, and then finally we know we're done when we get here. Let's do one together. That was just one that's done for us. And once again, we're not going to do the whole thing, but we're going to get started. So we know FG equals HK. Why do I know that? Because it's given. And then I'm going to put substitution here. So instead of writing FG, what do I know? Well, I know FG is 4x minus 6. So I'm going to say, 4x minus 6 equals 22. The reason I know that is substitution. Now it's an algebra problem. Let's just solve this. So to solve it, I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So I'm going to say 4x equals 28. Why do I know that? Well, because I added the same thing to both sides. In mathematicians, we don't like to do a bunch of extra writing. So I'm just going to say plus and equals. That's the addition property of equality. On your computer, they call this addition and subtraction properties. So it means the same thing. I'll do what you're going to see on your computer. I should say sometimes on your computer. Sometimes they'll give you that as a choice. Sometimes they'll say addition property of equality. And then they called it substitution. We're just going to solve it. And in fact, looking at the flow proof here, once again, we got to read the mind. So I should have said 4x minus 6 plus 6 equals 22 plus 6 because you're adding 6 to both sides. They called it substitution. Sometimes you'll see it as simplified. I like simplify better. But your textbook likes to use substitution. You probably should defer to your textbook at least to start with because that's what you're going to do on your assignment. And then notice we divided both sides by 4. And then I'm going to write x equals 7. And how do I know? Whoops. I almost made the mistake a lot of you make. I put in my statement in for my reason. My reason is going to be, like I said, substitution or simplify. Don't have to write both, but usually I make it a multiple choice or a pull-down menu or a matching type of thing for you to do. And that is going to be, we're done. You don't have to write QED, but I'm going to. Now our third type of proof is probably the least favorite of students. Because to me, and I agree with you, I don't like paragraph proofs. But here, let's go through this. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You're just going to write out a paragraph. And when we write out a paragraph, we do have to talk about a couple things. Number one, it's called paragraph for a reason, because we're going to write in a paragraph. We start here, you're going to tell me why. And usually we start with our givens. We'll say because, or we'll say we are given. We are given y is the midpoint of xz. So I know y is the midpoint of xz. Then I know xz is congruent to yzy. Well, that's our midpoint theorem, isn't it? That's what we just learned. So although we're doing someone else's proof, we're going to start here by writing down what they have. Okay, then we know xy is congruent to wy because that's given. And like I said, if I was doing this myself, I would have put this in step 1, but they put it in step 2. So I'm going to mark down xy is congruent to wy. Oh, look at that. Everything is congruent. So by the definition of what? Notice what happened. I'm changing my congruent sign to an equal sign. And the reason I do that is I want to use algebra. So we talked about that's the definition of congruence. You could even say congruent statements, but I didn't leave a lot of room there, so we're just going to say congruence. So xy equals wy and xz equals yz. So then I'm going to replace, aren't I? And I'm going to get xy equals wy. Why can I say that? Well, that's, and xy equals wy. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going, back it up, xy, I have got xy equals wy, don't I? I don't know why they put that in. Sometimes it's tough to read other people's mind. I got to finish it up. I can rewrite that as wy equals xy over here. Whoops. Got to read the whole sentence. So notice I just flipped the sides. That goes back to algebra. That's your symmetric property. Usually I don't make students write that one down because it's so obvious. But sometimes we have to write it down in somebody else's proof. And then what we're going to do is I've got everything is equal. So I can either say substitution or transitive. We haven't talked about transitive yet, but that's pretty much the same thing when it comes to equations. Remember, a transitive says, hey, if A equals B and B equals C, then I know A equals C. It's the everything is equals property. You could have just as well said substitution, and that would have been correct. I just wrote transitive down because we haven't talked about it. And then notice I'm changing my equal sign back to a congruence. So by the definition of congruence again, I'm just going to go backwards. And you're going to have that. Now I will tell you, you're probably going to have some questions on your assignment on this, so make sure you use your time in class. And proofs are the one exception. Usually I don't help you on a test or a quiz, but I will help you on a test or a quiz on proofs until you get it, because you will get it eventually. Some of you are going to get it by the end of this chapter. Some of you are going to sit there and struggle and keep on working, and you got to be persistent, and then all of a sudden one day you're going to, these are easy. But until you get to that point, you're going to have some questions. It's all about mental maturity, not about being a mature person. It's just getting your brain to mature up to this deductive reasoning because it's not always easy. So let's work on your assignment and give you some extra time on your assignment, although if you don't get it done, I'll put it in missing until you get it done because I want to make sure you're asking questions. Ask questions on your assignment if you get stuck. If you're working on outside of class, skip it and then come on in and with your question and we'll help you out.